You know that feeling when you realize you've been living a lie? When everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you crumbles in an instant? That's exactly what happened to me 3 months ago, and what I did next. Well, let's just say I never thought I had it in me. But sometimes, when you're pushed to your absolute breaking point, you discover a strength you never knew existed. My name is Sarah, and this is the story of how I went from being the family doormat to orchestrating the most satisfying comeback of my life. If you've ever felt taken advantage of by people who were supposed to love you, or if you've ever wondered what it would feel like to finally stand up for yourself in the most epic way possible, then you're going to want to stick around for this one. And hey, if this story resonates with you, I'd love for you to hit that subscribe button and join our little community here. Trust me, we're just getting started. It all began on what should have been one of the happiest days of my life. I had just received news that my grandmother, my sweet Nana Helen, had passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 92. Now, don't get me wrong, losing her was heartbreaking, but there was also this sense of peace knowing she was no longer suffering. Nana had been battling dementia for the past few years, and watching this vibrant, brilliant woman fade away had been one of the most difficult things I'd ever experienced. What I didn't expect was what came next. 3 days after her funeral, I received a call from her attorney, Mr. Peterson, asking me to come to his office for the reading of her will. I honestly thought it was just a formality. My family had always assumed that Nana's modest estate would be divided equally among her 3 children, my father Michael, my aunt Linda, and my uncle Robert. I figured I might receive some small keepsake, maybe her old jewelry box or one of her countless photo albums. But when I walked into that wood-paneled office on that gray Tuesday morning, everything changed. Mr. Peterson, a gentleman in his 70s who had been handling Nana's affairs for over 2 decades, looked at me with this mixture of sadness and something else I couldn't quite place. He cleared his throat and began reading from the legal document in front of him. To my beloved granddaughter Sarah, who has been my constant companion and source of joy in my final years, I leave my entire estate, including my home at 1247 Maple Street, all bank accounts, investments, and personal property, with the hope that she will use these gifts to build the life she has always deserved. I felt like the world had stopped spinning. My entire estate? That couldn't be right. I looked around the room, expecting to see my father, my aunt, and my uncle, but Mr. Peterson had scheduled separate appointments for each of us. He explained that this was Nana's specific request, that she wanted to speak to each of us privately through her final wishes. The numbers he rattled off next made my head spin. The house, which I had assumed was maybe worth $200,000, had been appraised at $450,000. The bank accounts, which I thought might contain her modest Social Security savings, totaled over $300,000. There were investment accounts I never knew existed, a life insurance policy that named me as the sole beneficiary, and even a small collection of vintage jewelry that was worth more than I made in a year. In total, I had inherited nearly $800,000. I was 28 years old, working as a part-time administrative assistant while trying to finish my teaching degree, and I had been living paycheck to paycheck for as long as I could remember. This inheritance wasn't just life-changing. It was everything I had ever dreamed of and more. But here's the thing about my family that you need to understand. We had always been close, or at least I thought we had been. Growing up, Sunday dinners at Nana's house were sacred. We'd all gather around her old oak dining table, sharing stories, laughing, and just being together. My father would tell jokes that made everyone groan, my Aunt Linda would update us on her latest home renovation project, and my Uncle Robert would share stories from his job at the post office. I was always the quiet one, the peacekeeper, the one who listened more than I spoke. When arguments broke out, which they did more often than I care to remember, I was the one who tried to smooth things over. When someone needed help moving, or babysitting, or just someone to vent to, I was always there. I prided myself on being the reliable one, the one everyone could count on. What I didn't realize was that somewhere along the way, being reliable had turned into being taken for granted. And being taken for granted had turned into being used. The first sign that something was wrong came just 2 days after the will reading. I was still processing everything, still trying to figure out what this inheritance meant for my future, when my phone started ringing. It was my father. "Sarah, honey, we need to talk," he said, his voice carrying that tone I knew all too well. It was the same tone he used when he was about to ask me for a favor that wasn't really a favor at all, but more like an obligation disguised as a request. "Of course, Dad. What's going on?" "Well, I've been thinking about Nana's will, and I think there might have been some kind of mistake. I mean, it doesn't make sense that she would leave everything to you. Not that you don't deserve it, sweetie, but she always talked about wanting to make sure all of her children were taken care of." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean, a mistake?" "I think we should contest it. You know, just to make sure everything is proper and legal. I've already spoken to a lawyer friend of mine, and he thinks we might have a case. The thing is, these legal proceedings can be expensive, and I was wondering if you might be able to help us out with the costs. You know, since you're the one who benefits from the will being corrected." I sat there in stunned silence. He wanted me to pay for them to contest the will that had left everything to me. The audacity of it was breathtaking, but what hurt even more was the way he was framing it, like I was somehow being selfish by accepting what Nana had clearly wanted me to have. "Dad, I don't think Nana made a mistake. She was very clear about her wishes, and Mr. Peterson said she had updated her will just 6 months ago. She knew exactly what she was doing. Sarah, you have to understand our position here. Your Aunt Linda is facing foreclosure on her house, and your Uncle Robert's medical bills from his surgery last year are piling up. This inheritance could solve all of our problems, but instead, it's all going to someone who doesn't really need it. Someone who doesn't really need it." Those words hit me like a physical blow. I had been struggling financially for years, working multiple jobs while trying to finish school, living in a tiny apartment that I could barely afford, and somehow I was the one who didn't really need help? But I tried to keep the peace, like I always did. "Dad, I understand that everyone is going through tough times, but this is what Nana wanted. Maybe we can figure out a way for me to help everyone without contesting the will." "That's very generous of you, sweetheart. How much were you thinking?" And there it was. The assumption that, of course, I would share, that of course I would give them what they wanted, because that's what I always did. I was the giver, the helper, the one who sacrificed for everyone else. "I need some time to think about it, Dad. This is all very overwhelming." Of course. Take all the time you need, but don't take too long, okay? These legal deadlines can be tricky." After I hung up, I sat in my little apartment and really thought about my relationship with my family for the first time in years. When was the last time any of them had asked how I was doing? When was the last time they had offered to help me with anything? When was the last time they had treated me like someone whose opinions and feelings mattered? The more I thought about it, the more examples I could remember. Like when I was 22 and my car broke down, and I called my father for help. He told me he was too busy, but suggested I call my Aunt Linda. When I called her, she said she couldn't help, but maybe my Uncle Robert could. When I called him, he said he didn't know anything about cars, but maybe I should call my father. I ended up taking 3 buses to get to work for 2 weeks while I saved up for repairs. Or when I was 25 and going through a really rough breakup, and I called my Aunt Linda crying, needing someone to talk to. She listened for about 5 minutes before telling me she had to go because she was meeting friends for drinks. And maybe I should call my dad. When I called him, he said he wasn't good with emotional stuff, and maybe I should call my Uncle Robert. Uncle Robert said he was watching a game, and could we talk later? Later never came. But when any of them needed something, I was always there. When my father's business was struggling, I lent him $2,000 from my student loan money. When my Aunt Linda was getting divorced, I spent weeks helping her pack and move, using my vacation days from work. When my Uncle Robert had his surgery, I was the one who drove him to appointments and brought him groceries while he recovered. I was always there for them, but they were never there for me. And now, when I had finally received something that was truly mine, they wanted to take it away. The phone calls continued over the next few days. First, my Aunt Linda, using almost the exact same script as my father. Then, my Uncle Robert, who was a little more direct about it. Then my father again, this time with more urgency in his voice. "Sarah, I've been talking to the lawyer, and he says we need to move quickly on this. The longer we wait, the harder it becomes to contest. I really think this is the right thing to do. Dad, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I don't think contesting the will is the right thing to do. Nana left me this inheritance for a reason, and I think I should honor her wishes. Sarah, that's very naive of you. You don't understand how these things work. Family estates are meant to be shared among family members. What you're doing is selfish. Selfish. There was that word again. I had spent my entire adult life putting everyone else's needs before my own, and now I was being called selfish for wanting to keep what was rightfully mine. Dad, I'm not being selfish. I'm being respectful of Nana's wishes. She had 3 children, and she could have left her estate to all of you if that's what she wanted. But she didn't. She left it to me. And don't you think that's a little suspicious? I mean, what did you do to influence her decision? Were you filling her head with stories about how broke you were? Were you making her feel guilty about the rest of us? I felt like I had been slapped. Are you seriously accusing me of manipulating Nana? Dad, I visited her every week, not because I wanted her money, but because I loved her and I wanted to spend time with her. When was the last time you visited her? When was the last time any of you spent more than an hour with her? That's not fair, Sarah. We all had our own lives and responsibilities. Not everyone can afford to spend their time visiting elderly relatives. I couldn't afford it either, Dad. I had to choose between working extra shifts and visiting Nana, and I chose Nana. Every single time. I chose her because she was important to me, not because I expected anything in return. Well, regardless of your motivations, the fact remains that this inheritance should be shared. And if you're not willing to do the right thing voluntarily, then we'll have to pursue legal action. Then I guess you'll have to do what you think is right, Dad. But I'm not going to help you pay for it. I hung up the phone with my hands shaking. I had never stood up to my father like that before, and part of me felt terrible about it. But another part of me felt something I hadn't felt in years, a sense of self-respect. That night, I called Mr. Peterson. I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with, and I needed to know what my options were. Sarah, I'm glad you called, he said. I've been expecting this conversation. Your grandmother actually predicted that there might be some pushback from the family, and she left specific instructions about how to handle it. What kind of instructions? She wrote a letter, to be opened only if her will was contested. She also set aside a separate fund to cover any legal expenses you might incur in defending the will. She was very thorough in her planning. Can you tell me what the letter says? I can't share the full contents over the phone, but I can tell you that your grandmother was very clear about why she made the decisions she made. She had been observing the family dynamics for years, and she wanted to make sure her estate went to someone who would truly appreciate it and use it wisely. Mr. Peterson, can I ask you something? Do you think they have a legitimate case for contesting the will? Sarah, I've been practicing estate law for over 30 years, and I can tell you that this will is ironclad. Your grandmother was of sound mind when she made these decisions. She had proper legal representation, and she followed all the necessary procedures. More importantly, she documented her reasoning extensively. If they want to contest it, they're welcome to try, but they're going to lose, and they're going to spend a lot of money doing it. That conversation gave me the confidence I needed to make my next decision. I wasn't going to let my family bully me into giving up what Nana had left me, but I also wasn't going to sit back and let them drag me through a lengthy legal battle. I was going to take control of the situation. The next morning, I called my boss and told her I was taking some personal time. Then I drove to the bank and met with the estate attorney Mr. Peterson had recommended. Within 3 hours, I had set up new accounts, transferred all of the inheritance money, and put legal protections in place to prevent any attempts to freeze or access the funds. But I wasn't done yet. I had learned something important about my family over the past week, and I wanted to make sure I fully understood the situation before I made any permanent decisions. So I decided to conduct a little experiment. I called my father back that afternoon. Dad, I've been thinking about what you said, and I want to make sure I understand everyone's financial situation before I make any decisions about the inheritance. Can you help me get a clear picture of what everyone is dealing with? Of course, sweetheart. I'm so glad you're being reasonable about this. So you mentioned that Aunt Linda is facing foreclosure. When is that happening? Well, it's not happening immediately, but she's behind on her payments, and the bank is being very aggressive about it. How far behind is she? I think she said 3 months, maybe 4. And what about Uncle Robert's medical bills? They're pretty substantial. I think he owes somewhere around $15,000. That's a lot. Is he making payments on them? I think so. But you know how these medical payment plans work. The interest just keeps building up. And what about your business? You said it was struggling. It's been a tough year, honey. The economy has been hard on small businesses like mine. I'm behind on some of my business loans, and I'm worried about having to close down. How much are you behind, Dad? It's complicated, Sarah. There are several different loans and credit lines. I'd say maybe $20,000 total. I did some quick math in my head. Even if I gave them everything they said they needed, we were talking about maybe $50,000 total. That was a lot of money, but it was nowhere near the $800,000 I had inherited. Yet they were acting like they deserved the entire estate. Dad, I have an idea. Instead of contesting the will, what if I just help everyone with their immediate financial problems? I could give Aunt Linda enough to catch up on her mortgage, help Uncle Robert with his medical bills, and help you with your business loans. That way, everyone gets the help they need, and we don't have to go through a legal battle. That's very generous of you, Sarah. How much were you thinking of giving each of us? Well, based on what you've told me, I was thinking maybe $20,000 each. That should cover everyone's immediate needs. There was a pause on the other end of the line. $20,000 each? Sarah, that's very kind, but I don't think you understand the full scope of our financial situations. We're talking about much more than just catching up on some bills. We're talking about securing our futures, making sure we can retire comfortably, making sure we can take care of our families. Dad, are you saying that $20,000 isn't enough? I'm saying that when you have an inheritance of $800,000, giving away $60,000 of it isn't exactly a huge sacrifice. We're family, Sarah. We should share in this blessing together. And there it was, the truth I had been afraid to acknowledge. They didn't just want help with their immediate problems. They wanted me to divide the entire inheritance with them, as if Nana's wishes didn't matter at all. Let me think about it, Dad. This is a big decision. Of course, take your time. But remember, we're family. We're supposed to take care of each other. After I hung up, I sat in my car in the bank parking lot and cried. Not because I was sad, but because I was finally seeing my family clearly for the first time in my life. They didn't love me. They loved what I could do for them. They loved how I made their lives easier, how I was always there when they needed something, how I never asked for anything in return. But the moment I had something they wanted, something that was truly mine, they were willing to destroy our relationship to get it. They were willing to lie, manipulate, and guilt me into giving up what Nana had left me. That's when I made the decision that changed everything. I wasn't going to play their game anymore. I wasn't going to be the family doormat. I was going to show them exactly what it felt like to be on the other side of manipulation and lies. I started by doing some research. I wanted to know exactly what their real financial situations were, not the sob stories they had been telling me. It didn't take long to find out that things were very different from what they had claimed. My Aunt Linda wasn't facing foreclosure. Her mortgage was current, and she had recently refinanced to get a lower interest rate. What she was facing was the end of her divorce proceedings, and she was about to lose the house to her ex-husband as part of the settlement. She wanted money to buy a new house, not to save the one she had. My Uncle Robert's medical bills weren't $15,000. They were closer to $5,000, and he had been making regular payments on them for months. His insurance had covered most of the surgery costs, and he had a payment plan set up with the hospital. What he wanted was money to pay them off early so he could qualify for a loan to buy a new truck. And my father's business wasn't struggling because of the economy. It was struggling because he had been embezzling money from his business account to fund his gambling addiction. He owed money to several different creditors, not because of legitimate business expenses, but because he had been using company funds to play poker and bet on sports. Finding out this information wasn't difficult. A few phone calls to mutual friends, some careful questions asked at the right time, and some basic internet research told me everything I needed to know. My family hadn't just been lying to me about deserving the inheritance. They had been lying to me about why they needed it. But I wasn't ready to confront them yet. I had a better idea. I called my father back the next day. Dad, I've made a decision about the inheritance. I want to help everyone, but I want to do it in a way that makes sure the money is used responsibly. That sounds wonderful, Sarah. What did you have in mind? I want to set up a family trust fund. I'll put $200,000 into it, and we can use it to help family members who are facing genuine financial hardships. But there will be conditions. Anyone who wants to access the fund will have to provide documentation of their financial situation, and the money can only be used for specific approved purposes. A trust fund? Sarah, that seems unnecessarily complicated. Why can't we just divide the money and let everyone manage their own finances? Because I want to make sure the money is used wisely, Dad. This is a one-time inheritance, and I want to make sure it provides long-term security for everyone, not just a short-term fix. I appreciate your concern, honey, but we're all adults here. We can manage our own money. Can you, Dad? Because from what I understand, your business is in trouble because of poor financial decisions. And Aunt Linda is losing her house because of her divorce. And Uncle Robert is struggling with medical bills. Maybe some financial oversight would be helpful. Sarah, you're being condescending. We don't need you to manage our lives for us. I'm not trying to manage your lives, Dad. I'm trying to help while also being responsible with Nana's money. This is what she would have wanted. How do you know what she would have wanted? You're 28 years old, Sarah. You don't have the life experience to make these kinds of decisions. I have enough life experience to know that Nana left this money to me, not to all of us. If you don't want to participate in the trust fund, that's your choice. But it's the only way I'm willing to share the inheritance. Fine, set up your trust fund, but I want to be involved in the decisions about how the money is distributed. I'm sorry, Dad, but that's not how it's going to work. I'll be the sole trustee, and I'll make the decisions about distributions based on documented need and approved uses. That's not acceptable, Sarah. If you're using family money to help family members, then the family should have a say in how it's used. It's not family money, Dad. It's my money. Nana left it to me, remember? I could hear the frustration in his voice when he responded. Sarah, I'm trying to be patient with you, but you're being unreasonable. This inheritance should be shared equally among all of us, and you know it. According to who? Because according to Nana's will, it should go to me. According to basic fairness and family loyalty. Family loyalty? Dad, when have you ever shown loyalty to me? When have any of you ever put my needs ahead of your own? When have you ever been there when I needed help? That's not fair, Sarah. We've always been there for you. Really? Name one time. Name one time when I needed help and you were there for me without me having to ask multiple times or beg for it. There was a long pause. Sarah, I don't like the tone you're taking with me. I'm your father, and I deserve your respect. Respect is earned, Dad, and you've spent the last week trying to manipulate me into giving up my inheritance. That's not exactly respectful behavior. I'm trying to help you do the right thing. The right thing for who? For you? For Aunt Linda and Uncle Robert? Or for me? For the family, Sarah. For all of us. There is no us in this situation, Dad. There's just me and the inheritance that Nana left me. And I'm going to honor her wishes, whether you like it or not. Sarah, if you don't reconsider your position, we're going to have to take legal action. Then do it. But I'm not going to be bullied into giving up what's mine. I hung up the phone, and this time I didn't feel guilty about it. I felt powerful. For the first time in my life, I had stood up to my family and refused to be manipulated, and it felt amazing. But I wasn't done yet. I had one more card to play. Over the next few days, I continued to have conversations with my Aunt Linda and Uncle Robert. I offered each of them the same deal I had offered my father, the family trust fund with me as the sole trustee. And just like my father, they both rejected it. They didn't want help on my terms. They wanted the entire inheritance divided equally among all of them. What they didn't know was that I had been recording these conversations. Not because I planned to use the recordings maliciously, but because I wanted to have a clear record of what was being said. I wanted to be able to go back and listen to their exact words, to make sure I wasn't misremembering or misinterpreting their intentions. And what I heard when I listened back to those conversations was eye-opening. The manipulation tactics they were using were sophisticated and coordinated. They had clearly been talking to each other, sharing strategies, and planning their approach. They were using guilt, obligation, family loyalty, and even subtle threats to try to get me to give up my inheritance. But more than that, I could hear the contempt in their voices. They weren't treating me like a family member whose feelings and opinions mattered. They were treating me like an obstacle to be overcome, a problem to be solved. They were so confident that they could manipulate me into giving them what they wanted that they weren't even trying to hide their true intentions. That's when I decided to stop playing defense and start playing offense. I called Mr. Peterson and asked him to schedule a family meeting. I told him I wanted to gather everyone together to discuss the inheritance and hopefully reach a resolution that would work for everyone. He agreed to host the meeting in his office, and we set a date for the following Friday afternoon. I called my father, Aunt Linda, and Uncle Robert and told them about the meeting. I said I had been thinking about everything they had said, and I wanted to find a way to make everyone happy. They were all eager to attend, convinced that they had finally worn me down and that I was ready to cave to their demands. What they didn't know was that I had spent the week preparing for this meeting in ways they couldn't imagine. First, I had hired a private investigator to document their actual financial situations. I now had bank statements, credit reports, and detailed financial records for all three of them. I knew exactly how much money they had, how much they owed, and what their real financial needs were. Second, I had worked with Mr. Peterson to prepare a detailed presentation about Nana's estate planning process. We had documentation showing that she had consulted with multiple attorneys, that she had been of sound mind when she made her decisions, and that she had specifically chosen to leave everything to me after careful consideration. Third, I had prepared a comprehensive analysis of my relationship with each of them over the past several years. I had documented every time I had helped them, every time I had asked for help and been turned down, and every time they had taken advantage of my generosity. But most importantly, I had prepared a surprise that none of them would see coming. The meeting was scheduled for 2 o'clock on Friday afternoon. I arrived early and spent some time with Mr. Peterson, making sure everything was set up exactly the way I wanted it. Then I sat back and waited for my family to arrive. They came in together, which wasn't surprising. They had clearly been coordinating their approach from the beginning. My father was wearing his best suit, the one he usually reserved for important business meetings. My Aunt Linda had dressed conservatively, trying to look like someone who was facing serious financial hardship. My Uncle Robert looked uncomfortable, like he didn't really want to be there, but had been pressured into attending. "Sarah, sweetheart," my father said as he walked over to give me a hug. "I'm so glad you decided to call this meeting. I think we can work everything out." "I hope so, Dad. I really want to find a solution that works for everyone." Mr. Peterson called the meeting to order and asked me to start by explaining why I had requested the gathering. I stood up and looked at each of my family members in turn. "I asked you all here today because I wanted to have an honest conversation about Nana's inheritance and what it means for our family. Over the past 2 weeks, each of you has approached me with requests for money, and I've been trying to figure out the best way to handle those requests." "We appreciate that, Sarah," my Aunt Linda said, "and we want you to know that we're willing to be flexible about the arrangements." "That's good to hear, Aunt Linda, because I have some questions I'd like to ask, and I'm hoping you'll be honest with me." "Of course, dear. What would you like to know?" "Let's start with your mortgage situation. You told me you were facing foreclosure, but according to the county records, your mortgage is current and you recently refinanced. Can you explain that discrepancy?" The color drained from my Aunt Linda's face. "Well, the foreclosure situation is more complicated than I initially explained. It's not exactly a foreclosure, but I am at risk of losing the house. Because of your divorce settlement, not because you're behind on payments." "Yes, that's correct. But the end result is the same. I need money to buy a new house." "I understand. And Uncle Robert, you told me you owed $15,000 in medical bills, but according to the hospital records, you actually owe less than $5,000, and you've been making regular payments. Can you explain that?" My Uncle Robert shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Sarah, I may have overestimated the amount. Medical bills can be confusing, and I wanted to make sure I had enough to cover everything." "Including the new truck you want to buy?" How did you know about the truck?" "I know about a lot of things, Uncle Robert. Just like I know about Dad's gambling problem and the real reason his business is struggling." The room fell silent. My father's face had gone completely white, and he was staring at me with a mixture of shock and anger. How dare you investigate us like we're criminals, he said, his voice shaking with rage. We're your family, Sarah. We're supposed to trust each other. Trust each other? Dad, you've been lying to me for 2 weeks. All of you have been lying to me. You've been trying to manipulate me into giving up my inheritance by making up sob stories about financial hardship. And when that didn't work, you threatened to take legal action against me. We weren't lying, Sarah. We were trying to help you understand our situations. By exaggerating your debts, by making up crises that don't exist, by coordinating your stories to make me feel guilty. That's not helping me understand. That's manipulation. Sarah, please, my Aunt Linda said. Let's not let this get out of hand. We're family. We should be able to work this out. You're right, Aunt Linda. We are family. And that's exactly why I'm so disappointed in all of you. Because family members are supposed to support each other, not lie to each other. Family members are supposed to respect each other's wishes, not try to override them for their own benefit. We do respect you, Sarah, my Uncle Robert said. We just think the inheritance should be shared. Based on what? Based on your needs? Because your needs aren't as urgent as you claimed. Based on fairness? Because it's not fair to ignore Nana's wishes. Based on family loyalty? Because none of you have shown much loyalty to me over the years. That's not true, Sarah. We've always been there for you. Really? When? When I needed help with my car? When I needed someone to talk to after my breakup? When I needed financial help in college? When I needed any kind of support from my family? You were never there. Not once. Sarah, you're being dramatic. We've had our ups and downs, but we've always been a close family. Close? Dad, when was the last time you called me just to see how I was doing? When was the last time any of you invited me to anything that wasn't a holiday or a family obligation? When was the last time you treated me like someone whose opinions and feelings mattered? Sarah, I think you're letting your emotions cloud your judgment here. We're trying to find a practical solution to a complex situation. No, Dad. You're trying to take money that doesn't belong to you, and you're using emotional manipulation to try to get me to give it to you. It's not emotional manipulation, Sarah. It's family loyalty. It's what families do for each other. Is it? Because I've been doing things for this family my entire adult life, and I've never gotten anything in return. I've lent money that was never repaid. I've provided free labor whenever anyone needed it. I've been the emotional support system for everyone else's problems. And what have I gotten back? Nothing. Until now. Sarah, we appreciate everything you've done for us. But this inheritance is different. This is about securing everyone's future. No, Dad. This inheritance is about honoring Nana's wishes. She left this money to me because she wanted me to have it. She didn't leave it to all of us because she didn't want all of us to have it. It's that simple. Sarah, your grandmother was elderly and possibly not thinking clearly when she made that decision. She may have been influenced by spending more time with you in her final years. Are you suggesting that I manipulated Nana into leaving me her money? I'm suggesting that the situation may not be as straightforward as it appears. Mr. Peterson, would you please show them the letter? Mr. Peterson nodded and pulled out a sealed envelope. Your grandmother left specific instructions that this letter should be opened only if her will was contested or if there were serious questions about her motivations. He opened the envelope and began reading. To my beloved family, if you are hearing this letter, it means that there has been some dispute about my final wishes. I want you to know that I made my decisions with full knowledge of the consequences and after careful consideration of each of your needs and characters. I have left my entire estate to Sarah, not because she manipulated me or influenced me, but because over the years, she has been the only member of this family who has consistently shown me love and respect without expecting anything in return. She visited me regularly, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She listened to my stories, helped me with my daily tasks, and treated me like a person whose thoughts and feelings mattered. The rest of you have treated me like an obligation, visiting only on holidays and special occasions, calling only when you needed something, and generally acting like spending time with me was a burden rather than a pleasure. Michael, my dear son, I know about your gambling problem. I know that you have been struggling with this addiction for years, and I know that giving you a large sum of money would only enable your destructive behavior. I hope that someday you will get the help you need. but I cannot in good conscience provide you with the means to further harm yourself and your family. Linda, my dear daughter, I know that you have made poor financial decisions throughout your adult life, and I know that you have a pattern of living beyond your means. I also know that you have never learned to manage money responsibly, and I fear that any inheritance you received would be squandered within a few years. Robert, my dear son, I know that you have always felt entitled to financial support from others, and I know that you have never fully learned to stand on your own 2 feet. While I love you dearly, I believe that giving you a large inheritance would only reinforce your dependency on others rather than encouraging you to become self-sufficient. Sarah, on the other hand, has always been responsible with money, even when she had very little of it. She has worked hard to support herself through school and has never asked for handouts or special treatment. She has proven herself to be trustworthy, generous, and wise beyond her years. I am leaving my estate to Sarah because I believe she will use it wisely and because she has earned it through her love, loyalty, and consistent kindness to me over the years. If the rest of you are upset by this decision, I encourage you to reflect on your own actions and consider how you might have shown me more love and respect during my lifetime. I love you all, but I trust Sarah to carry on my legacy in a way that honors the values I have tried to live by throughout my life. With love and final wishes, Helen Margaret Thompson. The silence in the room was deafening. I looked at each of my family members and saw a mixture of shock, anger, and embarrassment on their faces. They had expected to come to this meeting and pressure me into sharing the inheritance, but instead, they had been confronted with the truth about their own behavior and motivations. I think Nana's letter makes her intentions pretty clear, I said quietly. She didn't make this decision lightly, and she didn't make it because I manipulated her. She made it because she observed all of our behaviors over the years and made a judgment about who she trusted to handle her legacy responsibly. This is ridiculous, my father said, standing up abruptly. I'm not going to sit here and be lectured by a 92-year-old woman who was clearly not thinking straight in her final years. Dad, she wrote this letter 6 months before she died, when she was still completely lucid. Mr. Peterson can verify that she was of sound mind when she made these decisions. I don't care what Mr. Peterson says. This whole thing is a setup, and I'm not going to be part of it. You're right, Dad. It is a setup, but not in the way you think. I set up this meeting because I wanted to give all of you one last chance to be honest with me, to treat me with respect, and to accept Nana's wishes gracefully. Instead, you've spent the last 2 weeks lying to me, manipulating me, and trying to take something that doesn't belong to you. Sarah, you're making a huge mistake, my Aunt Linda said. Family is more important than money. If you keep this inheritance all to yourself, you're going to destroy our relationships forever. Aunt Linda, our relationships were destroyed the moment you decided to lie to me about your financial situation in order to get my money. All of you made the choice to prioritize money over family when you decided to contest Nana's will and try to manipulate me into giving up my inheritance. We weren't trying to manipulate you, my Uncle Robert said. We were trying to help you understand that families should share their good fortune. No, Uncle Robert. You were trying to guilt me into giving you money you didn't earn and don't deserve. There's a difference. Sarah, I want you to think very carefully about what you're doing here, my father said. If you go through with this, if you keep all of this money for yourself, you're going to regret it. You're going to lose your family, and you're going to spend the rest of your life wondering what might have been different. You know what, Dad? I've already thought about that, and I realized that I'm not actually losing my family, because I never really had one to begin with. What I had was a group of people who were willing to accept my help and support when they needed it, but who were never willing to provide the same for me. That's not true, Sarah, isn't it? Name one time, Dad. Name one time when you sacrificed something important to you in order to help me. Name one time when you put my needs ahead of your own wants. He stood there in silence, unable to answer. I can name dozens of times when I did that for you. When I lent you money I couldn't afford to lend. When I used my vacation days to help you with your business. When I canceled my own plans to be there when you needed me. But you can't name even one time when you did the same for me. Sarah, that's different. You're young and single. You don't have the same responsibilities we do. I'm 28 years old, Dad. I have a job, I have bills, I have responsibilities. Just because I don't have a mortgage or kids doesn't mean my time and money are less valuable than yours. Sarah, please, my Aunt Linda said. Let's not let this argument destroy our family. We can work this out. We could have worked it out, Aunt Linda, if you had been honest with me from the beginning. If you had respected Nana's wishes. If you had treated me like a family member instead of like an ATM. But you didn't do any of those things. What do you want from us, Sarah? What would it take for you to reconsider your position? I want you to admit that you lied to me. I want you to admit that you tried to manipulate me. I want you to admit that you have never treated me with the same respect and consideration that I have always shown you. And I want you to accept that Nana's inheritance is mine, fair and square, and that I don't owe you anything. Sarah, that's not realistic. We're not going to humiliate ourselves just to make you feel better. Then we don't have anything more to discuss. I stood up and gathered my things. Mr. Peterson, thank you for hosting this meeting. I think we've accomplished what we needed to accomplish. Sarah, wait, my father said. You can't just walk away from this. We're your family. No, Dad. Family members don't treat each other the way you've treated me. Family members don't lie to each other, manipulate each other, or threaten each other. What you are is relatives who happen to share some DNA with me, but that doesn't make you family. Sarah, if you leave here today without working this out, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. You know what I regret, Dad? I regret wasting so many years trying to earn your love and respect. I regret believing that if I just helped you enough, supported you enough, sacrificed enough for you, you would finally see me as someone who mattered. But you never did, and you never will. I walked toward the door, then turned back one more time. If any of you ever want to have a real relationship with me, one based on mutual respect and genuine care for each other, I'm open to that. But it will have to be on equal terms, and it will have to start with you acknowledging the way you've treated me and making a genuine effort to change. And if we don't, my father asked, then you'll continue to be strangers who happen to share my last name. And I'll continue to be the person who inherited everything Nana had to leave, because she recognized that I was the only one who truly loved her without expecting anything in return. I left the office and walked out into the bright afternoon sunlight. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe freely. I had finally stood up for myself, finally refused to be manipulated, finally claimed what was rightfully mine. But the story doesn't end there, because what happened next was even more satisfying than I could have imagined. Over the following weeks, I began to put my life back together in ways I had never thought possible. I paid off my student loans, bought a reliable car, and moved into a beautiful apartment in a neighborhood I had always dreamed of living in. I was still working and finishing my teaching degree, but the financial stress that had been weighing me down for years was finally gone. More importantly, I began to understand what it meant to have self-respect. I started setting boundaries with people in all areas of my life. I stopped saying yes to every request for help, and I started asking for help when I needed it. I began to surround myself with people who valued me for who I was, not for what I could do for them. About a month after the meeting at Mr. Peterson's office, I received a call from my Aunt Linda. She had been thinking about everything that had happened, and she wanted to apologize. She admitted that she had lied about her financial situation, and she acknowledged that she had been trying to manipulate me into giving her money she didn't deserve. Sarah, I've been doing a lot of soul-searching since our meeting, she said, and I realize that I've been a terrible aunt to you. I've taken advantage of your generosity for years, and I've never given you the love and support you deserved. I appreciate you saying that, Aunt Linda. That means a lot to me. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I hope that maybe we can start over. I'd like to have a real relationship with you, one where I treat you with the respect you deserve. I'd like that too, Aunt Linda, but it's going to take time to rebuild trust, and it's going to require consistent effort from both of us. I understand. And Sarah, I want you to know that I support your decision to keep the inheritance. Your grandmother knew what she was doing, and she made the right choice. That conversation gave me hope that at least one relationship in my family could be salvaged. My Aunt Linda and I began having regular phone calls, and slowly we started to build a genuine friendship. She never asked me for money again, and I never offered it unless she had a real emergency. My Uncle Robert took a different approach. He called me a few weeks later, not to apologize, but to make one final attempt to get money from me. He had convinced himself that if he could just find the right words, the right angle, he could still change my mind. Sarah, I've been thinking about what you said at the meeting, and I think I understand where you're coming from. But I want you to consider something. What if we made this a loan instead of a gift? I could pay you back with interest over time. Uncle Robert, I'm not interested in lending you money. But Sarah, this would be a win-win situation. You'd be helping me out, and you'd be earning a return on your investment. Uncle Robert, I said no. I'm not going to lend you money, and I'm not going to give you money. The inheritance is mine, and I'm keeping it. Sarah, you're being selfish. This family has always helped each other out. And now, when we need help, you're turning your back on us. Uncle Robert, this conversation is over. If you want to have a relationship with me, it needs to be based on something other than money. If you can't do that, then we don't have anything to talk about. I hung up the phone and blocked his number. I had given him the same opportunity I had given my Aunt Linda, and he had chosen to continue trying to manipulate me. I wasn't going to waste any more time or energy on someone who refused to respect my boundaries. My father was the most stubborn of all. He spent several weeks trying to find a lawyer who would take his case to contest the will. But every attorney he consulted told him the same thing Mr. Peterson had told me. The will was ironclad, and he had no legitimate grounds for contesting it. Finally, about 2 months after the meeting, he called me one evening. But instead of apologizing or trying to reconcile, he launched into a tirade about how I had ruined the family, how I was selfish and ungrateful, and how I would regret my decision for the rest of my life. Sarah, I hope you're happy with yourself. You've destroyed this family over money. Your grandmother would be ashamed of you. Dad, Nana left me a letter explaining exactly why she made her decision. She wasn't ashamed of me. She was proud of me. That letter was just the ramblings of a senile old woman. She didn't know what she was saying. Dad, you can believe whatever you want to believe, but I know the truth about Nana, and I know the truth about you, and I'm not going to let you make me feel guilty for accepting what she wanted me to have. Sarah, you're making the biggest mistake of your life. Family is all that matters, and you're throwing it away for money. Dad, I'm not throwing away family. I'm refusing to be abused by people who call themselves family, but don't act like it. There's a difference. Sarah, I'm your father. I deserve your respect. Dad, you're a gambling addict who lied to me and tried to manipulate me into giving you money to feed your addiction. You lost my respect when you chose to prioritize your own selfish desires over our relationship. How dare you talk to me like that? I'm cutting you out of my life, Sarah. Don't ever call me again. Dad, you cut me out of your life years ago. You just never bothered to tell me. He hung up on me, and I haven't heard from him since. It was painful, but it was also liberating. I had finally stopped pretending that we had a relationship when all we really had was a pattern of him taking advantage of me. 6 months later, I made a decision that surprised even me. I decided to use part of my inheritance to start a nonprofit organization that provides financial literacy education and emergency assistance to young adults who are aging out of the foster care system. These are kids who have grown up without family support systems and who often struggle to navigate the financial challenges of early adulthood. I called it the Helen Thompson Foundation in honor of my grandmother. The mission statement reads, to provide support and resources to young adults who have demonstrated resilience, responsibility, and kindness, but who lack the family support systems that many of us take for granted. The foundation has been running for over a year now, and we've helped more than 200 young people get on their feet financially. We provide emergency loans, financial counseling, and educational workshops. But more than that, we provide a supportive community for people who understand what it's like to feel alone in the world. Running the foundation has been the most rewarding experience of my life. I've met incredible young people who have overcome challenges that would have broken many adults. I've seen what happens when someone who has never had support finally receives it. And I've learned that family isn't about blood relations or shared DNA. It's about people who show up for each other, who support each other's dreams, and who treat each other with love and respect. The other day, I received a letter from a young woman named Maria who had participated in one of our financial literacy programs. She wrote, Sarah, I wanted to thank you for believing in me when no one else did. The loan from your foundation allowed me to finish nursing school, and I just got my first job at the children's hospital. I promise to pay it forward by helping other young people the way you helped me." Reading that letter, I thought about what my father had said about family being all that matters. He was right, in a way. Family does matter, but family isn't defined by genetics or last names. Family is defined by love, support, and mutual respect. And the family I've built through the foundation is more loving and supportive than the biological family I was born into. I also thought about what my grandmother would think of how I've used her inheritance. I believe she would be proud. She left me her money not because she wanted me to hoard it, but because she trusted me to use it wisely and generously. And that's exactly what I've done. The foundation has grown beyond anything I could have imagined. We now have a staff of 8 people, all of whom are passionate about helping young adults achieve financial independence. We've partnered with local colleges, social service agencies, and businesses to create a comprehensive support network. And we've been recognized by the state as one of the most effective nonprofit organizations working with this population. But perhaps the most satisfying moment came about 8 months ago when I received an unexpected phone call. It was from my cousin Jessica, my Aunt Linda's daughter, who had heard about the foundation through a friend who had benefited from our services. "Sarah, I had no idea you were doing this work. This is incredible. I'm so proud of you." "Thank you, Jessica. That means a lot to me." "Sarah, I have to ask you something. My mom told me about what happened with the inheritance, and I want you to know that I think you did the right thing. I watched my mom and my uncles try to manipulate you, and it made me sick. You deserved better than that." "I appreciate you saying that, Jessica." "Sarah, I know this might be awkward, but I'd love to get involved with the foundation. I'm a social worker, and I work with a lot of young people who could benefit from your services. Would you be interested in collaborating?" That conversation led to Jessica becoming one of our most valuable partners. She refers clients to us, helps with our educational workshops, and has become a trusted friend and ally. Through her, I've reconnected with several other cousins who had been kept in the dark about the inheritance drama by their parents. It turns out that my Aunt Linda had been honest with her children about what had happened, and they had all sided with me. They understood that their mother had been wrong to try to manipulate me, and they respected my decision to keep the inheritance. "Sarah, we've all watched you be the family peacekeeper for years," my cousin David told me. "We've seen you give and give and give and never ask for anything in return. When we heard that Nana left you her estate, we all said it was about time someone recognized how much you've done for this family. What about your parents? Aren't they angry that you're supporting me?" "My mom has come around. She realizes she was wrong, and she's been working on rebuilding her relationship with you. As for my dad and Uncle Michael, they're stubborn and proud, but they'll come around eventually. And if they don't, that's their loss." Having the support of my cousins has been incredibly healing. It's helped me realize that not everyone in my family was against me, and that the toxic behavior I had experienced was limited to a few individuals rather than representative of the entire family. As I'm recording this story, it's been almost 2 years since I received my inheritance. My life has changed in ways I never could have imagined, but not just because of the money. The real change has been in how I see myself and how I allow others to treat me. I've learned that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary. I've learned that you can't have a healthy relationship with someone who refuses to treat you with respect. I've learned that family should be a source of support and love, not stress and manipulation. Most importantly, I've learned that standing up for yourself doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a strong person. And sometimes, the people who accuse you of being selfish are actually the ones who have been selfish all along. The foundation continues to grow, and I'm planning to expand our services to include job training and mentorship programs. I'm also working on my master's degree in social work, with the goal of eventually becoming a licensed therapist who specializes in helping young adults navigate difficult family relationships. I still think about my father sometimes, and I still feel sad about the way things ended between us. But I don't feel guilty about my decision to keep the inheritance. I know that I honored my grandmother's wishes, and I know that I've used her gift to make a positive difference in the world. A few months ago, I received a letter from my Uncle Robert. He had been watching the foundation's work from a distance, and he wanted to apologize for the way he had treated me. He wrote, Sarah, I've been thinking about what happened between us, and I realized that I was wrong. I was selfish and manipulative, and I treated you badly. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know that I'm proud of what you've accomplished with the foundation. Your grandmother would be proud too. I wrote back and told him that I appreciated his apology, and that I was open to rebuilding our relationship if he was willing to put in the effort. We've been having monthly phone calls since then, and while we're not close yet, we're making progress. My Aunt Linda and I have developed a genuine friendship, and she's become one of the Foundation's most generous supporters. She volunteers at our financial literacy workshops, and she's helped us connect with other donors who believe in our mission. The relationship with my father remains complicated. He's reached out a few times through my Aunt Linda, expressing interest in reconciling, but he's never been willing to take responsibility for his behavior or to acknowledge the harm he caused. I've told him that I'm open to a relationship, but only if he's willing to be honest about his gambling addiction and to make amends for the way he treated me. So far, he hasn't been willing to do that, and that's okay. I've learned that I can't control other people's choices, but I can control my own responses to those choices. I've chosen to surround myself with people who value me, support me, and treat me with respect. And I've chosen to use my resources to help others who have faced similar challenges. If you're listening to this story and you're dealing with toxic family members who are trying to manipulate you or take advantage of you, I want you to know that you're not alone. It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to say no. It's okay to prioritize your own well-being over other people's wants and demands. You don't owe anyone access to your time, your money, or your energy, regardless of how closely related you are to them. Family should be a source of love and support, not stress and manipulation. And if the people in your life aren't willing to treat you with respect, then you have every right to limit your interactions with them. I also want you to know that it's possible to build a chosen family that's healthier and more supportive than the one you were born into. The young people I work with through the Foundation have taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about commitment, care, and mutual respect. If you've had experiences similar to mine, I'd love to hear about them in the comments below. How did you handle toxic family members? What advice would you give to someone who's struggling with similar situations? Your stories and insights could help others who are facing these challenges. And if you're inspired by what we're doing at the Helen Thompson Foundation, I encourage you to look into similar organizations in your own community. There are young people everywhere who need support and encouragement, and there are many ways to make a difference in their lives. Thank you for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to share, but I hope it helps someone out there who's struggling with similar challenges. Remember, you deserve to be treated with respect and kindness, and you have the right to stand up for yourself when others try to take advantage of you. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to refuse to enable someone else's destructive behavior. Sometimes the most family-oriented thing you can do is to honor the wishes of someone who truly cared about you. And sometimes the most generous thing you can do is to use your resources to help people who will truly appreciate and benefit from your kindness. My grandmother always told me that the best way to honor someone's memory is to live a life that would make them proud. I think about that every day as I work to build something meaningful with the gift she left me. I hope that wherever she is, she knows that her legacy is living on through the lives of the young people we're helping to build better futures for themselves. If you found this story helpful or inspiring, please share it with others who might benefit from hearing it. And remember, you have the power to choose how you respond to difficult situations and difficult people. Choose self-respect. Choose healthy boundaries. Choose to surround yourself with people who value you for who you are, not for what you can do for them. That's the lesson I learned from my inheritance drama, and it's the most valuable thing my grandmother ever gave me, even more valuable than the money itself.